The mountains of North Carolina rose like silent guardians over the Cherokee village, their peaks shrouded in morning mist that danced between the ancient pines. Adsila walked along the path that led to the creek, her bare feet knowing every stone, every root that emerged from the damp earth. The reed basket swayed in her arms as she gathered the last wild blackberries of the season, her fingers stained with purple juice that dripped like small tears upon her bronze skin. The autumn of 1789 arrived with promises of change, and the air carried the sweet aroma of decomposing leaves mingled with the acrid scent of smoke rising from distant cabins. Her father, Sequoia, had returned the previous night from a long journey to the white traders' lands, bringing with him a heavy silence that had settled over their family like a storm cloud. Adsila had watched the tense muscles of his face as he obsessively polished his spear, his eyes fixed on some distant point she could not reach. Her mother, Winona, had prepared dinner in absolute silence, her precise movements around the fire revealing a tension that seemed to vibrate in the air like bowstrings stretched to their limit. The unspoken words hung between them like restless spirits, and Adsila felt the weight of something terrible approaching. The winds brought rumors of war among the southern tribes, and the men whispered about the need for weapons to protect their families from conflicts that spread like wildfire across the prairies. Sequoia belonged to those who believed that only strength could guarantee their people's survival, and his nights were consumed by tense conversations with other warriors about alliances and strategies. Adsila had grown up hearing these discussions, seeing how fear transformed proud men into shadows of themselves, how the need for protection slowly eroded the peace she had once known. The sun began to set when she returned to the village, and the smoke from the fires mixed with steam rising from the still warm ground. Children ran between the cabins, their laughter echoing against the walls of wood and clay, while the older women wove baskets under the golden light that filtered through the treetops. It was a scene of deceptive tranquility, for Adsila could feel the tension that ran beneath the surface like underground water, invisible but ever present. Her friends greeted her with forced smiles, and she realized they all shared the same silent apprehension that had accompanied her since morning. As she approached her cabin, Adsila saw three unknown men conversing with her father, their low but intense voices creating an atmosphere charged with meaning. They wore the colors and ornaments of the Muscogee, a southern tribe known for their skill in war and trade, and their presence there meant something important was about to happen. The tallest of the visitors, a broad-shouldered man with proud bearing, gestured as he spoke, and Adsila noticed how her father listened with an attention he rarely demonstrated. She stopped at the entrance, hesitant, feeling that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet comprehend. The conversation extended through the night, and Adsila remained awake on her mat, listening to the murmurs that filtered through the thin walls of her cabin. The words reached her in fragments: weapons, protection, agreement, daughter. Each word fell upon her heart like a stone in still waters, creating ripples of apprehension that spread throughout her being. Winona lay beside her, but her irregular breathing revealed that she too could not sleep, and from time to time, Adsila heard a soft sigh that seemed to carry all the weight of the world. When dawn finally came, painting the sky with shades of coral and gold, Sequoia called his daughter outside the cabin. His eyes, normally firm and determined, now carried a deep sadness she had never seen before, and his hands trembled slightly as he struggled to find the right words. The tallest Muscogee man remained nearby, observing the interaction with an unreadable expression. His arms crossed over his bare chest that displayed scars from ancient battles. Adsila felt the world spin around her when her father explained the agreement he had made during the night, his words reaching her like distant echoes of a nightmare. In exchange for an arsenal of muskets and sufficient ammunition to protect the Cherokee village, Adsila would be delivered to the Muscogee warrior as part of the payment. It was not a sale, Sequoia insisted, but an alliance agreement that would strengthen ties between the two tribes and guarantee mutual protection in times of war. The words sounded hollow even as he spoke them, and Adsila saw in his eyes the internal struggle of a man sacrificing his own soul for his people's survival. She felt her legs fail and only the strength of her will kept her standing as the reality of the situation settled in her mind like melting ice. The Muscogee warrior stepped forward, and for the first time, Adsila looked directly into his eyes. He was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps only a few years older than herself, and there was something in his expression that surprised her. It was not the cruelty or possessiveness she expected to see, but a kind of respectful sadness, as if he too understood the weight of the moment. His eyes were dark as a moonless night, and when he spoke, his voice was soft and measured, revealing an education that contrasted with his appearance as a warrior hardened by battle. He introduced himself as Ahanu, son of the chief of the Muscogee Confederation of the Lower Alabama River, and explained that he did not view the situation as other men might. His words were carefully chosen, and Adsila realized he was addressing both her and her father, acknowledging her dignity and agency in a situation where she had little control. He spoke about his own village, about the responsibilities he carried as a warrior and as a future leader, and about his belief that true strength came from mutual respect, not domination. Adsila felt something within her move slightly, a small spark of curiosity amid the fear that dominated her thoughts. Preparations for departure began immediately, and Adsila moved through them as if in a dream. Winona packed her belongings with trembling hands, each piece of clothing folded with excessive care that revealed her attempt to control the pain. Her ceremonial clothes, embroidered with beads and feathers that had been passed down through generations, were wrapped in soft furs along with her polished stone necklaces and weaving tools. Each object carried memories of her life in the Cherokee village, and she touched them as if wanting to absorb all the history they contained. Ahanu waited patiently during the preparations, demonstrating a courtesy that surprised many in the village. He helped carry supplies and personally checked the condition of the horses that would take them through the mountains, his movements revealing an efficiency born of years of experience on long journeys. When some children approached curiously, he knelt to speak with them, showing them small ornaments from his own tribe and explaining their meaning with gentle patience. Adsila watched these interactions from a distance, trying to decipher the character of the man who now controlled her destiny. The farewell was an open wound that bled in silence. Winona embraced her daughter for long moments, whispering blessings and advice in her ear, her tears wetting Adsila's hair like summer rain. Sequoia remained rigid, but his eyes betrayed the storm raging within him, and when he finally touched his daughter's face, his hands trembled like leaves in the wind. The other women of the village gathered to offer their farewells, each carrying small gifts and protective amulets, creating a circle of love and support around Adsila that she tried to engrave forever in her memory. Ahanu approached when it was time to leave and extended his hand to help her mount the horse. His touch was firm but respectful, and he waited until she was comfortably settled before mounting his own animal. 2 other Muscogee warriors would accompany them on the journey, serious-looking men who maintained a respectful but vigilant distance. Adsila looked back one last time, seeing her village grow smaller as they moved away, the smoke from the cabins mixing with the low clouds that covered the mountains like a farewell shroud. The trail wound through dense forests where sunlight could barely penetrate, creating a world of shadows and whispers where every sound seemed amplified. Ahanu rode beside Adsila, respecting her silence, but occasionally offering information about the landscape they crossed or stories of his own tribe. His voice was comforting in its constancy, and she began to realize he was genuinely trying to make the journey less distressing for her. It was not the behavior of a man who saw his companion as property, but of someone who understood the magnitude of the sacrifice she was making. 3 days of travel through mountainous territories brought them to the flatter lands of the south, where rivers ran wider and forests gave way to prairies dotted with groves of oaks and hickories. The climate was warmer here, and the air carried different aromas, the sweet scent of wildflowers mixed with the rich earth of cultivated fields. Adsila felt increasingly distant from home, but also began to perceive a different beauty in this new land, a vastness that contrasted with the protected mountains of her childhood. Ahanu had become more conversational during the journey, sharing stories of his tribe and explaining the Muscogee customs she would need to know. He spoke about the role of women in his society, about how they were respected as keepers of tradition and family, and about how his own mother had been an influential counselor in his village. His words revealed a perspective that contrasted with many of the stories Adsila had heard about other tribes, and she began to perceive that perhaps her new life would not be as terrible as she had imagined. On the third night, while they camped near a crystalline stream, Ahanu finally addressed the situation between them directly. He sat at a respectful distance from the fire where she prepared a simple meal, his words carefully measured and his posture open. He explained that he understood she had not chosen to be there, that he recognized the sacrifice she was making, and that he did not expect her to accept him immediately as a companion. His intentions, he said, were to court her properly, allowing her to know him as a man before expecting her to accept him as a husband. Adsila stopped stirring the food and looked at him directly for the first time since they had departed. Her eyes met his through the dancing flames, and she saw there a sincerity that touched her deeply. He was not trying to possess or dominate her, but offering a chance to build something real between them, based on mutual respect and gradual understanding. It was more than she had dared hope for when she learned of her fate, and she felt a small flame of hope ignite in her heart for the first time in days. When she finally spoke, her voice was low but firm. She expressed her gratitude for his kindness and his willingness to respect her, but also made clear that she would need time to process everything that had happened. Ahanu nodded with understanding, and she realized he genuinely expected nothing from her beyond her presence. That night, as she lay under the strange stars of an unknown sky, Adsila felt that perhaps, just perhaps, she could find a way to build a new life from the fragments of her former existence. The Muscogee village stretched along the banks of a wide, lazy river, its cabins built in concentric circles around a central plaza where a great fire remained always burning. The structures were different from those Adsila knew, made of interwoven sticks and covered with clay, some decorated with geometric paintings in shades of red and ochre. Children ran between the buildings, their voices mixing with the sound of flowing water and the constant work of adults who wove, hunted, and prepared food for the approaching winter. Ahanu first led her to his mother's cabin, a dignified middle-aged woman whose intelligent eyes assessed Adsila with curiosity, but without hostility. Nayeli had been informed about the Cherokee young woman's arrival and received her with the courtesy due to a guest, offering fresh water and a comfortable seat near the fire. Her hands, marked by years of manual work, prepared a simple but flavorful meal, and she spoke in low tones with her son, while Adsila rested from the long journey. There was ancient wisdom in her movements, an understanding of life's complexities that reassured Adsila more than any words could. The first days in the village were a mixture of mutual curiosity and caution. The Muscogee women observed Adsila with interest, noting her different clothes and weaving techniques, while she learned about local customs and the community's daily routines. Ahanu introduced her as his future wife, but made clear that the marriage would happen only when she felt ready, a declaration that raised some eyebrows but was respected. He had built a small separate cabin for her, ensuring her privacy and autonomy while she adapted to her new life. Slowly, Adsila began to find her place in the community. Her skills with medicinal plants, learned from her Cherokee mother, proved valuable, and she began to help the village healer with her knowledge of mountain herbs. The older women appreciated her willingness to learn and her respectful curiosity about their traditions, and gradually she was accepted not as a stranger, but as a welcome addition to the tribe's extended family. Her work with medicinal plants also gave her a sense of purpose and usefulness that helped alleviate the pain of homesickness. Ahanu maintained a respectful distance, but was always present when she needed help or guidance. He taught her about the local geography, showed her the best places to collect plants, and shared stories about his people's rich oral tradition. Their conversations became more natural and frequent, and Adsila began to appreciate his intelligence and thoughtful perspective on the world. She noticed how he treated everyone in the village with respect, from the elders to the youngest children, and how his leadership was based on example and wisdom rather than imposed authority. These qualities awakened in her a genuine admiration that was the seed of deeper feelings. Winter arrived gentler than Adsila was accustomed to, but brought with it a forced intimacy that drew the village inhabitants closer. The long nights around community fires became occasions for stories, music, and the creation of deeper bonds between people. Adsila discovered she had talent for Muscogee songs, her voice adapting to the complex melodies that told the history of her new people. And her enthusiastic participation in these traditions won approval even from the most skeptical in the community. During these nights, she and Ahanu found themselves sitting close to each other, sharing the fire's warmth and whispered conversations that extended until late hours. He spoke about his dreams for the tribe's future, about his concern with growing pressures from white settlers, and about his hope that diplomacy could prevail over violence. Adsila shared her own experiences and perspectives, and he listened with genuine attention that made her feel truly heard and valued. These conversations revealed an intellectual and emotional compatibility that neither had expected. One night, when snow fell silently outside, Ahanu asked to accompany her to her cabin. On the way, he stopped and turned to her, his words carefully chosen but laden with emotion. He confessed that he had developed genuine feelings for her, which were no longer based only on respect or duty, but on true love that had grown through their daily companionship. His eyes shone in the moonlight as he spoke, and Adsila felt her heart accelerate as she realized her own feelings had evolved similarly. She responded with honesty, admitting that she too had begun to see him not as the man who had altered her destiny, but as a companion who genuinely cared about her well-being and happiness. Her words were gentle but firm, acknowledging the emotional journey both had traveled since that first day in the North Carolina mountains. When he extended his hand, she accepted it, and for the first time since leaving her native village, Adsila felt she was truly where she belonged. That night, they remained hand in hand under the stars, speaking about the future they could build together. Ahanu promised he would always honor her Cherokee heritage, that their children would learn about both traditions, and that she would always have a voice in decisions affecting their family. Adsila felt the last defenses around her heart dissolve, and for the first time in months, allowed herself to imagine a bright future with this man who had chosen love instead of possession, respect instead of domination. The love that had begun as a forced agreement had transformed into something real and lasting. Spring brought with it the decision to hold the wedding ceremony, a celebration that would unite not just two people, but also two peoples in an alliance based on love rather than political convenience. Adsila worked with the village women to prepare her wedding dress, combining Cherokee embroidery techniques with Muscogee patterns, creating a unique piece that symbolized the fusion of her two heritages. Each sewn bead and attached feather carried meaning, telling the story of her journey from despair to love through symbols that spoke to both heart and eyes. Ahanu sent messengers to the Cherokee villages, including a special letter to Adsila's parents, inviting them to the ceremony and offering assurances that their daughter had found not only safety, but also happiness in her new life. The response came weeks later, bringing blessings from Winona and Sequoia, along with traditional gifts and a message that they would travel to witness their daughter's union. The prospect of seeing her parents again filled Adsila with a joy she had thought she would never feel again. Preparations for the ceremony became a community project involving the entire village. Men hunted to provide meat for the banquet, women gathered wildflowers to decorate the central plaza, and children practiced special dances that would be presented during the celebration. Ahanu spent days preparing traditional gifts for his future wife, including a seashell necklace that had belonged to his grandmother and a set of weaving tools made by his own hands. Each gift was chosen carefully to demonstrate his commitment to her well-being and happiness. When Adsila's parents finally arrived, the reunion was a mixture of tears of joy and long-talked emotional conversations. Winona held her daughter for long moments, studying her face to see the changes the months had brought, and was visibly relieved to see the light of genuine happiness in her eyes. Sequoia conversed extensively with Ahanu, evaluating the man who had become his daughter's husband, and was gradually convinced that his desperate decision had resulted in a better outcome than he had dared hope. The ceremony itself was a magnificent celebration that combined traditions from both tribes, creating something new and unique that honored the past while looking to the future. Adsila and Ahanu positioned themselves in the center of the plaza, surrounded by their families and the united community, while elders from both peoples offered blessings and advice for their new life together. When they finally declared themselves married, the celebrations that followed lasted 3 days, with music, dance, games, and banquets that solidified the bonds between the two tribes and created memories that would last for generations. 5 years had passed since that first day in the North Carolina mountains, and Adsila's life had transformed in ways she never could have imagined. Her cabin now housed not only herself and Ahanu, but also their 2 small children. Koa, a 4-year-old boy with his father's dark eyes and his mother's determination, and Enola, a 2-year-old girl whose smile illuminated any environment. The children grew up bilingual, learning stories and songs from both traditions, creating a living bridge between 2 worlds that had become one. Adsila had established herself as one of the region's most respected healers, combining Cherokee knowledge about medicinal plants with Muscogee healing techniques, and people from distant villages sought her counsel and treatments. Her work had become not only a source of personal purpose, but also a way to honor the wisdom her mother had transmitted to her, keeping Cherokee tradition alive even in her new life. Ahanu completely supported her work, frequently helping with plant collection and medicine preparation, demonstrating the same respect for her abilities he had shown from the first day. Their relationship had matured to become a true partnership, based on mutual love, respect, and shared objectives. They faced together the challenges of village leadership, as Ahanu had assumed greater responsibility as his father aged, and Adsila had become a valuable counselor and respected voice in community decisions. Her opinions were sought not only in matters of health and well-being, but also in affairs of diplomacy and intertribal relations, and her unique perspective as someone who had lived in both worlds proved invaluable. The village prospered under their shared leadership, becoming an example of how different peoples could unite while maintaining their distinct identities. Traders from various tribes visited regularly, attracted by the place's reputation for justice and hospitality, and many intertribal marriages followed Adsila and Ahanu's example. The small community had become a symbol of hope in an era of growing tension and conflict, demonstrating that love and respect could overcome cultural differences and create something new and beautiful. As the sun set over the river waters, Adsila reflected on the extraordinary journey that had transformed her life. What had begun as a forced sacrifice had become the foundation for a rich and meaningful existence, full of love, purpose, and family. She thought of her father, whose desperate act of trading his daughter for weapons had inadvertently given her life's greatest gift, a companion who had chosen to see her as a person worthy of respect and love. As she watched her children playing on the riverbank, their laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air, Adsila knew she had found not just a new home, but a new way of living that honored both past and future, creating a legacy of love that would endure for generations. If you like this story, leave a like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next stories.